All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for coming. Whether you're here in person or if you're with us via Zoom, thank you very much. We have a unique group of people put together. There are about 40 people in the pool, just to kind of give you an idea. Right? Well, we need to stop and say hello to our president, Dr. Ross. So we have about 40 people in the pool. And so let me just kind of share with you that, first of all, congratulations. And we were very selective in who we invited to be in the pool because we wanted a variety for our students. Everybody who's in the pool has a doctorate and has been credentialed. And what our purpose is that we provide this nice variety so that our students, once they have their topic, can go through and decide who best aligns with them. So I'll talk a little bit later about how the committees are put together, but obviously we want the students to feel that they have a choice. And so thank you very much. You all bring very unique backgrounds to the pool. And it'll be up to our students to make the decision on who serves in what role. I did send out the profiles. I also sent that out to you. And I'm going to show you where you can locate that. But within the profiles, that's why I asked you what your degree was in and where it was from and if you were published, because that might mean something to the students. And so we want to make sure that we kind of provide that background information. Later on today, when you meet them, there's 3 different cohorts that are at different levels right now. So that initial cohort has 12 in it, and they will be putting together their dissertation committees after summer session is over. They'll have 24 completed credits, and then they'll be able to go ahead and move forward and create their dissertation committees. Okay? So at that time, they'll receive an email from me giving them the go-ahead to go ahead and reach out to who they would like to have serve. And the profiles also show who has been approved for what roles right now. Now that can change. For example, if you don't have any experience with a dissertation committee, we don't want you to necessarily jump in and share. So we might ask you to serve as a reader or methodologist first, get that experience under your belt, and then open that door for you to share. So just because you're not listed in a certain role right now doesn't mean that you can't be in the future, okay? Our idea is that we'll be doing this training each summer and adding into the pool, but also being able to change and be flexible as we bring people into different roles. So the first thing I want to just share with you is something that I'm very excited about. Dr. White-Pugh is the provost here, and she and I have been working on this for several months now. And it just rolled out a couple weeks ago. And so I just want to share with you that we do have an EDD portal now live. And if you go into your SPOO, My SPOO, and you go under Students, there's a button over here, called Doctoral Student Resources. And if you click on that, you get our portal. And there's a very nice picture that's super sweet, but the meat is underneath it. And there's different sections, and I'm just going to run through them really quickly because you have access to this. But we have the student orientation that they go through at the beginning of the program. We have an EDD handbook. Now the EDD handbook is kind of the nuts and bolts of the program, but it does not include the dissertation. That is in a separate handbook, all written out for them, all laid out, has a template and everything for them. Okay, so that's everything is laid out for them. Here's where you are. You're under dissertation committee member profiles. So you can go under there, you can take a look at yours. I've already sent it to you for like a pre-approval, but I will change those at semester. So if you have something that changes or that you need change, want change, I'll do that, but I'm only going to change this that semester. Then we have, this is our summer residency going on right now. So here's our itinerary for them, but then you notice that every session has a link where they can get the PowerPoint for it. And we're also doing recordings. So at the end of the day, or for sure by the end of the week, I don't know how fast it's all going to go, but we'll have all of the recordings up there, including this one, so that if you want to go back, if you want to take a look at it or say I got something, you can go back and you can easily gather that information. So these are all of the sessions that they'll be going through that have, I'll call it some instruction to it. There's some other sessions that they'll be doing on revision and things like that, peer reviews, things like that that are more interactive, and so we're not going to be recording those and uploading those. But the other things are down here that I just wanted to share some of the other areas. We have the writing, we have a lit review, and so this is Dr. Strickland's area. This is the librarian's area, and it includes ProQuest resources. We have a special area for comp, the comp assessment, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, and statistics. And Dr. Schatzberger will be in kind of overseeing that part, I'm sure with Dr. Haydick's expertise over there. And then we have all the program forms and surveys. So for example, if you know that you have a student that's getting ready to graduate, the form is here. Okay, if they ask you, hey, where do I go for that? When is it due? Things like that. They can go here and they can see that information. Okay. Then dissertation guidelines. And here's where your dissertation manual is. I also separated out the template, but it's also within the manual. Okay. All the rubrics are here for the students to be able to see. Your section is over here, and you have your own section here with a grade change form, progress monitoring, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Once the IRB is approved, because we're still working on changing over from an RCC to an IRB, once that's gone through all of its approvals, we'll have the forms up here. And this is also an IRB section. So we'll be working on that as approvals go through. The ballots are all here, which is going to be part of your committee work. And the fillable rubrics are here. So these the students get to see, but here's where you'll be grabbing it to actually fill it out. Okay. And then your dissertation committee member training is here if you want to go back and see the PowerPoint at any time. And right now, if you missed Dr. Haydick's session Thursday, our statistics, we have the notes here, and I just haven't had a chance to upload them.
And I will work on making a shorter, separate video on Data Explorer.
Okay, perfect. So Dr. Haydick is our guru for our statistics, and so he's been phenomenal already, and he's going to have a full day with the students on Thursday, plus Friday morning for analytics. And then we have a little area over here. It's under construction, but we really, really want our students to think about dissemination of information. Part of us, and we'll see this in the PowerPoint, but part of us is about community. And it's not only what you get out of it by doing your dissertation, but it's what are you going to do with that information to share it with your community, whoever your community is, whether it's your school, your district, regional, state, or beyond. So one of the things that they're going to have to do in summer residency 3 is part of that is that they have to decide on an area and actually do a proposal, whether it's grant writing, whether it's a proposal to present at a conference, whether it's a professional journal article, whether or not it's accepted is one thing, but they're going to have to do something to show how they're going to disseminate their information. And that also is a different type of writing that we all know and understand. So I just wanted to give you that overview so you know that what you have and you're not stressed out about trying to take all these notes and everything. Okay? So, I'm a walker, I'm a talker, so I'm going to try to keep myself here, but who knows where I'll end up. So just some things that we're going to talk about are the conceptual framework for Southern Wesleyan and how the School of Ed fits into that, the EDD comp assessment, committee roles, and then teaching in the EDD. And when we get down to that point, if you are not going to be teaching or not interested in teaching in the EDD, then I welcome you to, to either sign off through Zoom or to leave, and you don't have to hear that part of it. So, SWOO's conceptual framework, we are very proud of who we are, and we are a faithful community. I think that this really comes through in how we interact with our students and how we expect them to interact within their own communities, including interactions with their own students. And I think that this is one way that we do kind of separate ourselves, or do separate ourselves from other universities in the area, at least. We are very open to prayer. We have part of our online coursework. There's a prayer request area. There is an online, as a matter of fact, you'll see him, Reverend Williams. He is part of our support. And so we have an online chaplain. And I can tell you that students do reach out to us, and we reach out to our students to keep each other in prayer. And that's just part of who we are. So that's a neat part of building those relationships, but then how they expand on that and bring it out into their own communities is an important part of who we are also. So we feel that everybody has a purpose, everybody has gifts, and it's up to us to use those gifts. So how does that fit into the School of Ed? Well, we are very big, and this was noted, I believe, in our accreditation too, is that we have the Christian ethic of care. This is interwoven in every course. It's in our program outcomes. And part of it is the Christian ethic of care toward ourselves, and that's helping students understand that we have to have a balance in life. And part of that balance is taking time for God, taking time for prayer, and making sure that we're doing that, and not being hesitant about sharing our testimonies with people. So just all of that is part of our own self-care. And balance is a huge thing if you remember back to when you did your program. I think about what I did during my program, and I'm like, oh, man, I couldn't have done it without him, So, ethic of care towards self, ethic of care toward diverse individuals, and we are, we think about diverse individuals and we think about individualized plans, for everybody. But that's really, if our students step forward and they have a need, then we try to really work with the students. And as you come forward and you start teaching in the courses and stuff, it's not an excuse to miss deadlines and whatnot, but it is being compassionate and working with the student through life situations. And always being respectful, and that is with our students as well as with our colleagues. And sometimes, if you think about an online program, it's a little bit easier to be, I'll call it rude, if you're in an online setting. But I honestly have not seen that with our students at all. Our students have been very respectful to both each other and to the instructors. We've been running the program a year now. We have 40 students in the program. Our first group has been through 6 courses now, and I've never had a complaint about that. They are very respectful toward each other and toward the instructor. And I think that says a lot, too, on how we interact with them as instructors as well. And that brings up colleagues, kind of the same idea of being respectful and compassionate. When you think about their leadership, whether they're a teacher leader or an admin, or they're working in we have students in community colleges, churches. So we are not just a K-12 teacher or a K-12 administrator program, our students have a lot of varied backgrounds. And so with that in mind, looking at the gifts that they can bring forward and just the richness that they bring to these online discussions has been phenomenal. And so we look toward that. We don't want it to be a cookie cutter program. We want that diversity and respect between people. Okay to have a difference of opinion, but how you have that discussion is important. And then community goes back to what we were saying earlier about community. We're all part of a lot of different communities, because if you're working, you're part of that community. Attending church is that community. We go home to our families, we have that community. So, so when we talk about community in this respect, it's all of them, but really we want to make sure that they're understanding that their dissertation in and of itself is their contribution to the field. And that community is the one who should really be benefiting in some way from their work. Okay, so so that's one area of focus from community. So I'm just going to take a breath here and just see so far any questions, comments, anything. I know, like Kelly, I know that you teach in the program already, so feel free to. Any comments?
It's been a great experience for our students in the program.
Yeah. All right, move forward then. So when we talk about our students, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but really our students come from a variety of backgrounds. And the idea is that we want to impact them in a way that's relevant. So all of our coursework is relevant to whatever they're doing in the field. And we want to make sure that that we stay God-centered, faith-filled. So those are our students. And this kind of just says scholarly expertise. So that's the other part of it, the other language. So you notice that this one is in red. Those are the program outcomes. And I'm not going to read through them because you can do that on your own, and they're also out in all of the literature and everything. You all read, I'm sure. So, but just note that the second one is in red. The reason it's in red is because when they go to do their comp assessment, they have to choose this one that's in red plus 2 more. Okay? And that'll be their focus of the comp assessment when they go to do that piece of their milestones. Okay? So just keep that in mind. But this does say the Christian ethic. That's the one that we're focusing on. It's the Christian ethic and how they're bringing that to promote each student's academic success and well-being. So Christian ethic of care is the core. And I will share with you that we just went through accreditation for this program. If you didn't see the email, we're very proud that we had 3 commendations and no recommendations for this program. So all of everything's aligned. It's a beautiful thing. And we continue to work and improve. And we listen to our students. So one thing that makes our program unique is that we have 5 milestones, which isn't unique, but they're embedded, which is unique. So our students start out, and there's coursework, and it includes 3 summer residencies, of which one is going on right now. Those 3 summer residencies are each a week long. They each have a specific focus, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they go through 54 credits of coursework. Okay? Out of those 54 credits, there are 3 research classes. One is kind of an initial research with how to do searches and a lot of library skills. But the other 2, they're actually doing a pilot program, a pilot dissertation. And they're setting up chapters 1 through 3 in the first part. And then they're doing a meta-analysis and doing chapters 4 and 5 in the second research. So they're getting the experience of writing a dissertation several times before they write the dissertation, which we think is really an important piece. And then we have the comp assessment. We have the initial proposal defense, the IRB, and the final defense. So those are the 5 milestones. Just an overview of the courses, and this again, this is just general information, but I did just kind of want to show you, you know, how everything just kind of goes through. It's a lockstep program, meaning that they can't jump around. They just, they're 7-week classes, boom, 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 and they just keep going through. So the 3 summer residencies, how this works is that there's 7 weeks of online instruction, and then they come to us here on campus for a mandatory 1 week in person. And then they'll go back and they'll do another 7 weeks online. So the first one is focused on academic writing and qualitative research. Okay. So the academic writing, the last 7 weeks, they had 4 scenarios that they could choose from. And they chose one, and they've basically been working to create chapters 1 through 3 of the dissertation based on this scenario. We purposely chose something that we didn't think that anyone would do their dissertation on, so that they would not focus on the content, but they would focus on the process. Okay? Just like we, for high stakes testing, we go and we have the students go and practice testing. And, you know, when we go for our GRE or MAT, we did practice tests, right? So that's the whole idea for this particular summer residency is let's get the process with the type of writing that you need to do, because academic writing is a different type of writing. And a lot of times we'll have English teachers who say, hey, you know, I am an English major, but it's a different type of writing, so you have to transition. Okay. And dissertation 2, and we have awaiting feedback on those because we do want student feedback. And so there's a survey that'll go out at the end of this week. We'll ask them for their input on what they need, and then we'll create next year's summer residency. So summer 2, the tentative is that there would be a lit review focus, but not lit review from the standpoint of searches and stuff, but from the standpoint of credibility, how to filter, and that kind of thing. Looking at primary sources versus secondary. Okay, so that kind of focus. Okay, and the librarians have already been on board. They've already talked with them, and they're already thinking for next summer. The other area then would be qualitative. And so we already have the first group who's like, hey, I want to get done. I want to be done, you know, and we're like, we want you to work on it, but, you know, we want them to have the full experience and be able to have the opportunity to kind of go through different scenarios and practice points and whatnot before they jump in and actually write their dissertation. Summer residency 3 goes back to what I was sharing before about really how to disseminate the information.
No, I'm just making sure that worked because we had to jury rig some things. No, y'all never have to do that.
Y'all know Dr. Mack? She's ordained. Yay. I said, y'all know Dr. Mack? She's ordained. Yay.
Hey there. Well, I know some of the folks in the back. I watch that back row.
I know, right?
We're so glad y'all are here. Thank y'all so much for your help. Okay. Yeah, this is exciting. You're the first group that's been trying them.
That's right.
Yay! We love each other.
So, let me move on then. So assessments, so we're using chalk and wire as kind of a portfolio builder. They use Canvas for the coursework, okay? As a dissertation committee member, what I have set up for us is that there's a shell there that is like a course shell. It'll be, all 3 of the dissertation committee members will be listed as instructors, okay? So you all have equal access to it. And that's where the student will turn in submissions so that you can each make comments on it right there and see each other's comments. And there's Google Docs is a nice thing, but what I find is the formatting gets all messed up and then the students get frustrated and I thought we change that and yada yada. So we're hoping that this format will provide them the opportunity to turn in what they're actually turning in, you know, what it looks like at the end without having to make additional changes. So within that shell, you will have access to rubrics, the fillable rubrics, for the comp assessment and for each of the defenses. Okay, and just know that they go through and they use chalk and wire to put all of their assessments in. So at the end, there is a very, very short, either meets expectations or does not meet expectations, that's it, in chalk and wire for the chair to fill out. Because that will be my notification that I can go back and I can look at the full portfolio in Canvas to make sure that everything is done so I can authorize graduation. Okay? So that's how that's set up. They can do their comps between 30 and 36 hours. Okay, so I told you at 24 they get to develop their committee. Between 24 and 30, they're taking 2 more classes, but they're also preparing for their comps. Okay, or comp. The comp assessment is not an exam. We opted, because we're curriculum and assessment, we sat around and we powwowed and we figured out that none of the 5 of us on this committee had a really good experience with the comp exam. For example, I sat in a broom closet for 6 hours with a dot matrix printer at Marquette University. And then they came and checked to make sure I had enough ventilation and wasn't dead yet. While I worked on my questions. Now, do I remember the questions? Not at all. You know what I mean? So that was kind of just a point of discussion for us, and we decided as a group that a comp assessment would be a better alternative. It cannot supplement or supplant the dissertation. It is from their coursework, and it shows that they not only understand the coursework and for what this area of interest of theirs, but it links back to the program outcomes. The one that was in red plus 2 more. That's what the rubric is laid out to ask you as a member of the committee, and that's what they know that they have to do. Okay, so it's not a comp exam. It's basically a paper that will show that they've met these outcomes. Okay. Throughout the whole program, they have to have at least a B-. So when they've gotten to the comps, they know that they have a couple classes left, but that means that they've met that B-. As the chair, there are some initial questions at the top of the rubric that you need to answer, and if any of them don't show that the student has met those requirements, then they can't do the comps with. Okay, so that's another little thing for the chair to do. All right, and then the dissertation is their scholarly original work. So I wanted to just show you one example, and I hope that you can see this, but I just wanted to show you one example of what we mean by embedded. And I'll just kind of go through this quickly, but this is our first cohort, and they're unique in several ways. We kind of call them the guinea pigs, pioneers, you know, because this poor group, in all honesty, you know, they were our first. And so, you know, like with your first kid, you realize that, you know, like maybe that wasn't really lotion, it was soap, you know. So we listened to them, and they felt comfortable coming to us and letting us know what was working, what wasn't, and we've made changes based on their input, which is perfect. It's great. That's how it should work. We started that in summer last year. There will not be any more summer starts. Okay, so we're starting in fall or in January. Okay, so they're unique that way too. All right, so just keep those 2 things in mind as we talk about them. So, so they're already 6 classes in. Okay, they're actually working on their 7th and 8th class, which is kind of cool. So what they've done so far is they've had their research where they did their pilot chapters 1 through 3. now they're coming and they're doing their this mock dissertation. So they'll have a lot of experience by the time they get fall and they're ready to start. They're wanting to tear into their proposal is what they're wanting to do. So we're trying not to hold them back, but we're trying to make sure that they are getting this foundational experience that the rest of the cohorts are going to offer. So when they get to this part here in the fall, that's where they're going to, during their fall club classes is when they can start getting their dissertation committees together, and that's why that's orange, because somewhere in here, they'll be doing their comps. Okay? And then this is the second research class where they'll expand on that chapters 1 through 3 and do their meta-analysis. And then they can start working on their proposal. And yes, they can use this, but we've been telling them that they need to work with their committee. Just because they did this in research doesn't mean that their committee is going to automatically accept it. Okay? So you have the right as committee members to help them massage it, mature it, help them see other resources or other research that's out there that maybe they didn't see, things like that. Okay? So they'll be doing their pre-proposal. They'll be ready to defend their proposal at least by fall next year, if not this spring. So we're not going to hold them back. Okay? They'll be defending their proposal somewhere in here. Part of that too is the IRB has to be in place because then the next thing that they need to do, the next milestone is the IRB. Okay? You cannot collect, and you all know this, you cannot collect your data until the IRB is done. You don't want anyone to do anything that's illegal. So we have to have that IRB process in place for them no later than next fall, or fall of 2020 rather, and then they can go ahead and collect their data, analyze, do their chapters 4 and 5, do their final defense. Okay, so this group is a little different because the dissertation is actually before summer session 3. That won't happen with any other cohort. Okay, but they're asking if they have to come to summer session 3 if they already defended it. they're a gung-ho group. So, but we're figuring that they're going to need this time to go through the process. So that's that group. So any questions on the embedded milestones? Okay. So I just went through and I just made some connections to, I talked about alignment. So I'm not going to go through that, but just know that everything is aligned. So when we talk about the dissertation committee members, when we talk about them putting together their committees, it's formed by the students. Like I said, it's at 24, after 24 credits. There's 3 members. So the chair is really the driver, and we'll talk about some of the things that you're going to be doing or responsible for, or if you accept that position, what the expectation is. And then the methodologist and the reader. And if you just think about the reader as being a content expert, and the chair being the driver, and the methodologist helping with the design and making sure ethics and design and are well aligned with the study. Okay, so that's kind of an easy definition of each. All of our people, like I said earlier, all of the people in the pool have doctorates and are from accredited institutions and are credentialed. So as a dissertation committee member, or DCM, as we've been abbreviating to, so if you can say DCM, that's because I'm tired of saying that. You'll be helping with the comp assessment, you'll be helping with the proposal, the IRB, and the final defense. So there's actually 4 of the 5 milestones that you're involved in. The reason that we did comp assessment, and I think I shared this with you in the interviews, is because we want to give you the opportunity to get to know the student and get to know the student's style of writing. And as you know, a lot of completion of the dissertation is because of the writing process, or they get stumped, or they have problems with mechanics, or the editing part of it. Revision is a whole other thing, and so people understand how to do it. Or if a committee member comes forward and say, I need you to revise, and they're going, but I don't get it. What do you want me to do? So we just have to keep that kind of thing in mind. One thing that I want to say, and I've told them this over and over, but I really emphasized it this morning, is you are not their editors, okay? So it's not up to you to go through and correct their paper and have red marks all over because they're using A instead of an or whatever, okay? You are professionals that are serving in an expert manner, okay? So if they need to hire an editor, then they can do that, but that's on them to do. And eventually we'll have a pool of people who can serve as editors, and that's up to them to choose who they want and whatnot, and their arrangement is up to them. But for now, they just need to understand that you are here as their committee members to help them get through the process of the dissertation, okay? What we ask is for a 2-week turnaround. And that doesn't include, like, if they turn it in, on the first day of Christmas break, that all of a sudden it's your responsibility to turn this dissertation around over the holidays, so we're not asking that. But in a timely manner, because we want to keep them, and as you know from your own experience, you want to keep them progressing. If they're on if they're really doing well and their minds are working and they're writing, we don't want to stop that process or cramp it by not returning timely and meaningful feedback to them. Okay, so keep that process going. To keep that process going, we're asking for a 2-week turnaround. Okay, and then just effectively use the rubrics. And by effectively, we basically mean meaningful feedback. So, saying good job, we've talked about this as educators, saying good job is nice, but it doesn't mean anything to the person who's receiving that other than, hey, I don't have to revise, So tell them what they're doing well, tell them specifically what they might need to change or think about changing, or this is really good, have you thought about, So using that good, meaningful, effective feedback is really important to the process. And we just talked about this. One of the things that we didn't say, though, is to teach self-assessment. And that's a really important part of the process, too, so that they're thinking ahead and, they don't have to keep coming back to the chair or to the committee to look at things. But, by the time it gets to the chair, it should be well written. It should be pretty good and, I'll say ready to go, but we all know there's a lot. I always say peel the onion. There's a lot of things that you have to keep going. So, we know that that's part of the process. And another thing that's really important to us as committee members is to remember not to overwhelm them, like work on one thing at a time if there's several things that they need to fix so that you're not turning back the paper and saying, start over, oh my gosh, they go off the edge. I don't want to have to talk anyone off the ledge. So if you help me out by bringing people, through the process and, okay, now you've done that, let's look at this. Now you've done that, perfect. Let's move on and let's look at this part. So that's what I mean by one attribute at a time. And then celebrate what they are doing. I think that we all appreciate when somebody recognizes what we're doing well. And, it's really easy to get a rubric back and look at all the things that you have to do, But what about the things that they did well? So we want to make sure that we're recognizing the accomplishments that they're making, the progress that they're making on the dissertation. So the comp assessment, it's lockstep. I showed you the chart before. Each one has to write their own paper. It's accumulation of learning with a learning outcome 2 plus 2 additional learning outcomes. There's a rubric and successful completion. After successful completion, they're then considered a candidate. And that's kind of exciting. They kind of perked up with that one this morning that they get to be the candidate after they're outcome of that, so that's a good thing. So any questions about the comp assessment? Kind of spiraled back to it. All right. So the actual dissertation, the chapters 1 through 3, we have 5 chapters, which is a typical. There are some variations, but 5 is the typical number of chapters. Our chapters 1 through 3 serve as their proposal, and then they would do their IRB, then their final defense. There's rubrics for everything, and part of the chair's role is to progress monitor. So keeping in touch with the student throughout the whole semester, not just checking over with them at the end of the semester, but kind of touching point throughout. Maybe setting some soft deadlines, so that we can see, hey, in 2 weeks I want to see this, or I want to see this revision, just to keep them going. After they finish with all of their coursework and everything, and they're only working on their dissertation, there's an actual form that'll need to be filled out by the student and signed by the dissertation chair, just so that we can make sure that something's being done. Our goal is not to have any ABDs. We don't have an ADD program, we have an EDD program.
Amen.
And we want to make sure that they get through. That's our goal. And so we look forward to that. All right. So, specific. The chair is really the one who has the final approval of the dissertation topic. You're working with the full committee, but the chair really has to be the one that the student works with first and foremost. So building those relationships with your students is really important, and that's one of the benefits you have of being here in person today, is that you'll be able to meet the students and sit with them and start building that relationship one-on-one with them today, so that they remember you. I already told them, keep notes, write down who kind of really stood out to you, who you'd like to ask more questions of. We have one group that just started. They've only done two courses, so they might be very quiet. They might not know what to ask, but they're going to be there and they'll be in the background. And I told them, just sit back and listen to the other questions that are being asked if you don't have any to ask yourself. And so they are in different stages. So the chair's, your connection with the student is really important. You're their motivation, their inspiration, and you're the one who's kind of propelling them through the process, okay? You're the one who makes sure that timely descriptive feedback is provided, all right, from all members of the committee, not just yourself, okay? So there's a few things that you're asked to manage, and one of them is just understanding what your candidate might be going through. I have a young lady right now that I've been working with for 3 years, and that sounds like a long time, but she's been through a messy divorce, relocation, and some other things that we just know our students don't always have, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of perfect, no life situations going on, so I can do my dissertation, So we really want to know what's going on and how we can assist. Now, understanding balance and getting to know your students so that you can say something to them. For example, this young lady, because we have the relationship we do, I've had her in courses before and have worked with her. And so I told her just a couple weeks ago, I've let you breathe, I've let you have your time, and so now we need to set a deadline for this next part. And she said to me, I love you, Dr. Strike, that's why I have you as my chair. So, sometimes they just need that prompting, they need that structure, but if I would have done that 2 months ago, it wouldn't have been a good thing. So just understanding your student. The ethical research, that's everybody's duty to make sure that things are going in a way that's ethical and that they're being responsible with that part of it. The chair is going to make sure that the comp has been finished before they progress. Okay, so that's up to the chair. Any scheduling and leading of defenses is going to be up to the chair. And so there's invitations in the portal. All defenses are public. People can come on to the Zoom session. Everything's done online. So you'll be doing a Zoom session. But it is public where somebody else could come in as a guest and view. So we do have that opportunity. And then afterwards, taking care of making sure that the rubrics are completed and the ballots are completed. The ballots are your way of getting paid. So chairs, if you don't submit the ballot, then your team won't get paid, okay? That's our notification that everything has gone through, all right? And revisions, usually it goes back only to the chair, unless there's an issue. So the chair is the one who would get, say, for example, like my student right now that I was in his defense last Monday, and he still had not changed his chapters 1 through 3 to be past tense, even though I've been telling him throughout that it has to go from I will to the researcher did. So it's an easy fix, but when he did his final defense, there's a stipulation. There's something that has to be done, a revision that has to take place. The whole committee doesn't have to see that revision. Only the chair will receive that final paper, make sure it's done, and then it'll be done. Any communication with me as the coordinator that you feel needs to take place, any committee member can contact me, that's fine. But if you're working together as a team, then point person should be the chair, should connect with me if there's an issue or something that you have questions about as a team or whatever, okay? And then, this might not be known to everybody, but ProQuest does have a Distinguished Dissertation Award. And so if you're serving as a chair, you might want to consider that that might be a dissertation that could be up for that award. So that would be up to the chair to guide the student there. The methodologist, basically you're helping the student to make sure that things are stated in the right way, that there's a specific methodology or methodologies, method. The sample is of appropriate characteristics and size. That's really an important part I found, especially if somebody wants to do something within their district. You need to make sure that they're going to have a sampling that's going to warrant earning a dissertation, writing a dissertation on. Overseeing all of the methodology and assuring compliance with the program and professional norms and ethical and moral principles. And then supervising, kind of monitoring their data collection, helping them with not helping them do the analysis, but helping them find resources and tools to maybe help them do the analysis, coding, things like that. And then just making sure that, the theoretical and analytical pieces are all.
Question.
Yes.
So for methodologists, you mentioned that they're looking at or oversee implementation of generally accepted ethical and moral principles. And I see for the chair, they're responsible to oversee the IRB approval. What would be the first thing?
Well, you're going to be at the forefront, so when they're writing their proposal, the methodologist is going to be core. You're going to be the one that they're having these discussions with, and you want to make sure that it's ethical and everything. The IRB process will actually follow after they have their proposal, they've defended their proposal. So you don't want to get to the proposal defense and then have a question about the ethical piece of it. So that's where the methodologist is, when they put their rubber stamp on the, they're saying that things are going to pass in the IRB, that it looks good, it's ethical, there's no.
So the methodologist could conceivably end up being do that IRB proposal as well?
No, because it's going to be, and this is, I know, I don't know how much we want to get into the IRB, but the vision is that if we use something like the IRB net, that what the student does is they just upload. They're just uploading specific documents. And the chair is the one that makes sure that all of the documents are there that are required and that they're all complete. And then it goes actually to the IRB review board, whoever that is for that university. So all the chair is doing is putting their rubber stamp on that all of the necessary documentation is there. They're not taking responsibility for the IRB itself. Does that make sense? So that's why the methodologist is important, because the methodologist early on is saying, no, this is going to be fine. You're going to, I know that there's no guarantees until it goes through the IRB process, but the only thing I've ever had an IRB return for is if something is missing. There's a piece of the document, survey is missing or something like that in the documentation listed. I have never had an IRB return because it doesn't, it's unethical or it's questionable in any manner that way. I see the wheels churning over there. So Dr. Hayduck is on the IRB committee here. That's why he's well, what would I call you, vice chair?
I'm now to change the RAC, we have chair.
Chair, okay. So we're still working things out and trying to figure out going from I shouldn't say older process, but the past practice, I guess is the best way to say it, to the new practice. And so that changeover, there's been a lot of dialogue in what needs to happen on both sides. So it's been good. Nathan, did you have a question? Yeah.
So the students have a statistical package in the university itself, right?
Correct.
Is there going to be a resource for them with that just to get them started?
They already are. So this week, the second part of the week is Dr. Hayduck, and he'll be doing our statistics. He's doing both the package and the studio.
Okay.
And we sat through it last Thursday, and he did a phenomenal job. And so that's on in your portals, where if you don't get a chance to sit in with us, that'll be up there momentarily in the next couple of days. I'll try to get that up. So, but that's on there. So then next year, then we'll be working on the qualitative part of it. And our stats does have a qualitative piece to it now. Plug-in, I guess it's called.
Packages.
All right. So then the third person is the reader, and the reader is really the content expert. Okay. The reader is the one who helps conceptualize the thought, working with both the methodologist and the chair, but really, asking those questions about, have you looked into, here's another resource, have you used this author before? Really helping the student to just explore more or different resources, really. Helping to articulate and clearly define the research questions. That's been a big part of the reader. And then, of course, along with that, does the lit review reflect a depth to each of those research questions? In other words, is the student showing that there's a need for their study? So that the reader is really looking, that chapter 2 is really a big part of the reader's responsibility. Okay. And then providing descriptive feedback, assumptions and limitations, a comprehensive lit review, potential research outcomes, findings, outcomes, limitations. So that's the reader. So do you have questions on any of their roles? All right. So resources that you have available to you is the EDD portal. We do have the orientation online for for both, for the students, and then you went through an onboarding training. We're going to have an IRB training, but we have to complete the process here before we provide those modules. And thank you to those who, I know I sent it out and then I was like, wait a minute, we have to change something. So what we're trying to do is to kind of curtail all of those modules down to the ones that you would have to have as dissertation committee members to make it better for you so that it's more targeted and specific. Then the chair would probably have a couple of additional, I'm guessing at this point, but like I said, the conversation's still in place, but the chair would most likely have a couple of more modules to do, as with the students, okay? And the faculty directly working with the students in research classes and whatnot. So, but kind of if you think of it as, what do I have to know as a reader or as a methodologist? And that's kind of what we're trying to pare it down to, so that I think right now there are like 19 modules, and that was a lot. I spent a whole Saturday going through them, and I'm like, oh, good gravy. So we're trying to pare it down for you. So thank you for your patience, and we'll get there. All right. The other thing that we have available to us, and I just want to really put this out there, is Zoom sessions. And so students are doing these right now in their courses, where they're doing a weekly Zoom session. They also have the opportunity to Zoom in with the instructor if they need additional assistance. I'm really, really encouraging you as dissertation committee members to use that tool to really have that face-to-face, even though you're not in the same room with the student, but to have that face-to-face with the student, because a lot of times, you know, you can send a text. I have students who text me and whatnot. You can send a text or an email. That's not the same as having to sit and have a conversation with a person. And I find one of the best ways that I can help my students to peel that onion and pair their ideas is to just have a phone conversation. And that would also relate to the Zoom conversations too. Because if you can sit there, you know, doing something through email is one thing, but when you can sit there and bounce ideas off of each other, and I just heard you say, what about this? So just having those conversations have been so very beneficial to the students that I've worked with. And I've been in online programs this whole time, so with my dissertation students. So that is a huge benefit that we have. So I'm really encouraging you to use them. More connections there if you're interested. Okay, so I'm going to take a time out here because I know some of you are going to teach or interested in teaching in the EDD, but if you're not, then I just want to see if there's any additional questions. And if not, then I want to dismiss those who are not going to be teaching in the EDD. Any additional questions? All right. Thank you for coming. For those of you who are going to leave us, including on Zoom, if you're not going to be teaching with us, then you're free to log off. But thank you so much for being with us today and for being there for our students. I'm looking forward to putting those first dissertation committees together. And we were already bragging on how it's our privilege to hood our students going across the going across the stage. And we can't wait to hood our first students. Well, every student, but especially those first ones. So thank you very much. If there's no questions, feel free.
So then at 2:15, if I leave, where do I go next?
There's 3 rooms over at Nicholson Mitchell. They're not at the street level. You'll be going down 1 block.
So that's what will be at 2:15.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a minute. If you want to go ahead and you're not teaching and don't want to leave, then that's fine. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Isn't this great? Oh, yeah. Steve, how you doing?
Oh, yeah. Friday is analytics. Yeah.
I know. We probably will. I'm trying to get this paper. Yeah, in other words, chair, I don't know anything about that. That's the problem, don't do it. I was on a Cape Cod group, so I've been through it. I'm not real sure. Anyway, if it looks like it can work, I'll keep pushing. If you're interested, if you guys say no, then they would want to build, they would like to use Cherry Hill. And we would have automatic insurance ability. And they would have first right of refusal for graduates, which, because they are statewide. This nationwide. It's great. So it sounds really interesting, right?
All right, so I'm going to continue, and thank you for expressing an interest in teaching in the EDD program. So I will say that you've let me know that you're interested, and how this works is that remember I said that you were credentialed. So what we did was we went through your transcripts and we saw where your areas of strength were as far as what your background was that way, and then your VITAs as far as what your experiences did. Experiences were hands-on in a practical sense. So then when you were credentialed to be able to teach certain courses, okay? So where we're at right now is that we are starting our 4th cohort in the fall, which is very exciting. And so as you can see, though, we're still relatively small because we just started a year ago. So as we're building with cohorts, then we're going to be bringing more adjuncts, or affiliates as they call them here. We'll be bringing more people on. So that's how we're set up right now. We really look at alignment between the courses that are in need of an instructor, and then what you're credentialed for, and what you've expressed an interest to do. Okay, so all of those things are taken into consideration, and then you receive an offer from the dean, usually through Kelly Blankenship. If you receive an email from her, please note that all information comes through your SWU email. I just had a person this morning email me that they hadn't received anything, and it's because she was using her Gmail account. And I mean, once we have a SWU account for you, I know some of you are still waiting for HR things to go through, but once you have a SWU account, we don't use your Gmail or any other Hotmail and stuff like that.
Would we have gotten something that says we now have a school email?
You should, and what you can do is when we're done here, Kelly Blankenship is right down the hall, and we can check and see. I know she's been working on that.
Okay.
I told you that we had 40 people come on board. IT was a little overwhelmed. And they're doing a lot of other projects too. There's literally like 3 people in IT mentee, and they're trying to wire the Jericho project and things like that. If you're not familiar with Jericho project, they're building an on-site like little housing unit that our students will live with special needs people and, help each other learn, And so they're over there wiring the Jericho house right now. So they're torn in a lot of directions. So if we don't have an email, we'll look into that. So anyway, so that's the process. And this is just a little quote, just to remember that, we're teachers and you're so very valuable to the student. Whether you're, teaching a class or serving on their dissertation committee, you're so valuable to them. And the honest thing, in a nutshell, we can make them or break them, and we want to make them. So we want to build them up, not tear them down. So this just kind of captured what I was thinking. So I talked a little bit about relationships earlier and how we're a community, and that is a big part of who we are and how we interact with our students. It's up to you as to whether you want to do things like give out your cell phone number or something like that. That's up to you. I do sometimes with students give them my cell phone depending on what the situation is and whatnot. I used to give it out in every course until I started having people call me on at 9 and 10 o'clock at night on the weekends. They're just for no boundaries. So to help me with my own sanity, I now give it out sparingly. But it's up to you what you want to do as far as interactions and whatnot goes. If you are serving as an instructor, there's a couple things that we just want to make sure that you understand coming in. One is that we have the Zoom meetings regularly. Those Zoom meetings set us apart from other universities, and they are not meant to be distance learning situations or real-time situations, okay? So what we don't want to do is go online and keep our students for 3 hours on a Tuesday night, okay? What we do want to do is bring them together, build that community, build that learning community online, offer the opportunity to ask questions, clarify, prepare them for the upcoming week, provide them information for the upcoming assignments, things like that, okay? If they don't understand something from that week's material, that's a perfect opportunity to explain it or clarify it, but we're not there in these Zoom sessions to keep them for hours at a crack, okay? If you think of it as office hours online, that's a good way to think of it. So just as if we were in a university that on Tuesdays I had my office hours from 3 to 4, same idea, okay? So that's with the Zoom. We already talked about different ways to communicate with the students. The other thing is we really need our students to engage in the online learning community. So what we do is that they have their initial post due on Thursday, and then we allow them time to respond and process information and ask questions and things like that. But we have this mindset that if people are on social media and they can be on Facebook, then they can check in, So they are required to engage with their online community either Friday or Saturday and check in again on Sunday. The original, just so that you know, the original language in this program was that they had to do their initial post on Thursday and respond to 2 colleagues by Sunday night. Well, at 10:40 on Sunday night, somebody would go on and, everybody's in bed. Who are you talking to? So that's one thing that we reevaluated, and we came back and we said, hey, if we want engagement, we have to create the expectation to engage. But that also is then on us as instructors. And so if you work on, if you're working Friday and you can't be on Friday, then please make sure that you're on there on Saturday, And this is just the way I do it. It's not an expectation, but especially at the beginning or with the beginning courses, I respond to every student. Okay. Now you might think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But if you have 12 or 17 in a cohort, it's doable, And then that way it's showing the student that you are watching and listening to what they're saying in their responses, okay? And we're modeling for them what kinds of questions and how to ask the questions and how to go outside the box of, just reading and responding, boring. And I've had students come back and say, oh my gosh, that was, this is really like a discussion. This is like we're in class. I'm like, yay. So I really wanted to kind of put that out there. If you're going to be an instructor, an online instructor, engagement is huge. And actually one of the ladies who I didn't serve on her dissertation, but I know her from a dissertation that I chaired, and she works through the Department of Defense. She is doing her dissertation on online engagement, and she's defending soon if she hasn't already. And I told her I want a copy of her dissertation. So we're always looking for ways to improve that engagement opportunity. So our courses are 7 weeks long, so they go fast, when you think about it, in week 4, you're at midterm already, So we want to make sure that that we uphold high standards, and part of that is attendance. And I know it sounds kind of weird to have attendance online, but if somebody only puts an initial response and they're MIA the rest of the weekend, then they're absent. They're not. It's like showing up for attendance and then saying, can I go use the bathroom pass and never coming back? So we want to make sure that they are engaged throughout the whole weekend. And so we say you need to be in attendance, and that means engaging with others. We do say, hey, if you have some student exemplars that as you go through your courses and you're teaching them and something really stands out as being good, throw that student an email and say, hey, can I use this as an exemplar? Keep that email on file, and then throw me the exemplar and I will put it up into the development course. And then that way when other people teach the course, or the next time you teach the course, the exemplars will be there for your students to see. Okay? And then we know about the milestones, so I'm not going to go through that, but let me ask any questions on this part? Any comments? So one thing about our program is that we want it to be rigorous, and that really did come out in our accreditation, and that was really nice for us to see. But we really want to make sure that our students are earning their degree. We don't want to be, and that was really important for me when I was looking as to whether I wanted to change jobs and come here. That is something that I looked into, and we are not a mill. So our students do earn their degrees. It is rigorous. Everything is connected to Bloom's taxonomy, or depth of knowledge. We want them to substantiate their thoughts, opinions, and what I always say is words like I think, I believe, I feel. Not at this level. That's nice you feel that way. But you walk into a board meeting, you walk into, a parent meeting or meeting with your leadership, and you start out with, I think, and they go, goodbye. Or you say, I think we need to, and, can I make an appointment for this? And I've been in leadership, so I know you don't you want to listen, but you tell me why we need to have that or why you're thinking that we need to do that, and then we'll have that discussion. So we always say substantiate. And we use APA. So everything that they do needs to be in APA format. That's a real tough one, especially at the beginning. And Dr. Schatzberger teaches the first course. I've been teaching the second or third. And hopefully by the time they're done with that third course, they are on a roll and get it and whatnot. So if you're teaching later in the program, it should be well known how to do APA. Okay. But we do require APA for everything. Basically, we've talked about that. Deadlines. We have deadlines for a purpose. We have them not only because there are 7-week classes, but also because at this level, life is about deadlines, you know. And so if they have a family thing, you know, that came up, like somebody's in the hospital having, and if this has happened in our cohorts already, brain surgery, or one of the ladies lost her husband. I mean, that's serious stuff, you know. So of course we work with the student and do what we can to be compassionate and yet still keep them so that they're not, you know, I'll say falling behind, but we keep things open for them, you know, to finish up. The only time that we would have an incomplete is if there was truly an emergency, like a medical situation or a family emergency that kept them from doing the work. They come to you and say, I'm a football coach and we just went to state. That's sweet. You made your choice. And so deadlines need to be adhered to, and the incompletes are really for medical or illness purposes. I think, so we do have some interventions available. For example, we have Smart Thinking. Smart Thinking is actually a writing submission program that you can do. The turnaround time, from what I'm told, is 24 hours. So they can submit to Smart Thinking directly through the course that you're teaching. It's actually a link. As soon as they click on that link, it logs them in. They can submit their paper and get feedback in a 24-hour period. Okay, so that's one of the interventions we have. In the portal, there's a couple of other interventions, and it's under the section that Dr. Strickland is now in charge of with student services. Okay. And this just kind of goes through the graduate level, what it means here. And again, we talk about substantiating, submitting on time, APA. It's everything that we've really talked about, building up your chalk and wire and your Canvas portfolios. Okay, so that's really what that, pretty much talked about all of that. So we use what we call a Socratic model. I'm sure that you're familiar with that, where it's all about how we interact and how we question. We're all reading the same material, but it's how we process it and then how we interact with each other to really gain that understanding of that material. So that's one of the reasons that our discussions, our online discussions, are so important. So that's one of the things that I really explain to the students when they first are starting their coursework, is why those discussion boards are so important. And they really do a phenomenal job. They really do. So they get to do one course per term. There's 7-week courses, so there's 2 in a semester. And like I said earlier, it's lockstep, so it all follows. Faculty can teach 2 courses a term plus one other assignment. And I think, Dr. Hayden, did I get that right, or is it 2 courses a semester?
2 courses per semester, 1 per term.
Okay.
Would be within the overload.
Okay. We have to watch overload because of SACs, because we are accredited. But then plus another assignment. So if you're teaching and teaching, but then you can still be part of the dissertation committee. Okay. I know that Dr. Mack has told me that there's a cap on dissertations too, like how many you can be part of. They don't want you, and SACS doesn't want you to be having 15 dissertations. I have a colleague who just finished his 86th dissertation in like the 4 years. I don't know how that's even like possible. So they don't want you taking on too many, dissertations and teaching assignments and whatnot. Plus, most of us are working full time in a position, either that we're in or in a school district or whatever. So another thing that we ask is because of the fidelity of the program, that if you're coming in as affiliate faculty, that you not change syllabi or assignments or rubrics, because everything is aligned with our accreditation requirements. And so if you have a recommendation, send it to me. I'm more than happy to listen to it. Especially if you see like a book is becoming older and you have a book that you ran into that you think would eventually be a good replacement for that, then we have to rewrite the whole course, So, we're willing to do that. We want to stay on the cutting edge and whatnot, but we can't just have people using different books or different rubrics and things like that. So we uphold the fidelity of the program in that way and align with our accreditation. We use Canvas and chalk and wire. If you want to, one of the things that you can do is to bring in supplemental articles and whatnot, other resources that you've run across. We welcome that. That's always welcome. And actually, our students are to the point where they're bringing things in, and they're putting things online. And hey, I ran into this. I might like it. You're interested in doing this in your dissertation. You expressed an interest. I ran across this article. Great sharing going on. So we encourage that. And then, of course, we have the embedded librarian and chaplain that we talked about. So there is an onboarding course. If you haven't had that or had the invitation to do that, it should be coming soon because of how HR has been setting things up. All communications we ask are done with the student. Like if they're emailing you that you have a 24-hour turnaround or over the weekend a 48-hour turnaround, we don't expect you to be online all weekend long waiting for their, their Saturday night question about the paper due Sunday, But they are allowed one absence in a 7-week period. That's it. So if they're MIA a week, you might want to email them and remind them, hey, you get 2 and you're going to have to redo this at your own expense. And you'll receive that. So that's how we work with attendance. Engagement we talked about, and building relationships we talked about. So once you're invited to teach and you accept that invitation, you say, yeah, that's a class I don't mind teaching. Kelly will obtain the book for you and they can have it sent directly to your phone, okay, or wherever you want it sent. 2 weeks prior to the course, we ask that you send out a welcome email and let the students know what their textbook is. They won't have access yet to Canvas to that course, which will stress them out a little bit because they like to see what they have to do. Sometimes we have students try to work ahead and we ask that they not do that, okay? There is a way in Canvas, if you're familiar with Canvas or Blackboard from Habit, where you can set the due dates and they cannot get into that prior to. I've only had to do that twice, and mainly because of 1 or 2 students. So usually they're pretty good about just, moving forward and whatnot. When you log in, you're going to put your instructor information. There's a link for you. You can tap on that link and then you can add whatever you like. I like to add a little picture. My students now know, that I love to hike and they've seen some hiking pictures of me and whatnot. So first thing they did when they were coming in, oh, you like to hike, blah, blah, blah. So it does help build that relationship. you can set the due dates for the modules and things like that. And what you want to do too is make sure all of your links are working. You know as well as I do, working with technology, that sometimes they change a link or, you know, they're doing something. If you find something that's not working, please let me know, because then I can go into the development course and I can fix it there so it's not happening in the future. Okay. Make sure that your syllabus and everything is there. I would just do the math real quick and just make sure everything adds up to 100%. I've got found sometimes that whatever the reason that we all of a sudden have an extra 10% somewhere or whatnot. And then set up your groups. If you're going to have a group assignment, you can do that right at the beginning and have that done. And then that way when the assignment comes, it's fast. And provide exemplars. So we already talked about that, how to do that. Anything that you put into your course is going to be only in your course. If you feel it's something that should be in future courses, send it to me and I'll put it in the development course. Okay. We talked about establishing a presence. So your introduction and providing a picture and some information there helps to build those connections. You open the questions, and you know, your Zoom sessions really play into that and building the relationship and stuff in that way. So we've pretty much gone through all of that. And we've talked about high quality discussions and what we need to do. One of the things that I didn't say is when they post things after midnight on Sunday, that's a late post. It's read but not graded. Okay. And sometimes too, you'll be in a hot discussion and they'll keep it going for a day or two, and that's fine too. But those aren't graded. They're only graded on what comes between Thursday and Sunday night. Okay. Talk about that. And we talked about attendance. We talked about absences and what that means. Now, holidays and days off, I mean, I forget which term it was, but with everybody having different spring breaks, you know, that was kind of a crazy way, you know, for us to have to kind of get through and figure out, you know, how this was going to work for everybody, because we still had to move forward in our 7 weeks, you know. But we tried to work as a group and try to figure out when we could, you know, maybe take the week off, per se, and it worked out fine. So just work with your group. You are the instructor of record when you teach. So say Memorial Day or Labor Day or whatever, you know, you might want to give them an extra day or whatever on the paper, and that's fine. Then you change the due date for it. Okay. And a sit-out is really, that's something that would come through us. But really, if you see a student that's really struggling, say, you know, like the young lady who just lost her husband unexpectedly, you know, you don't have to have that conversation with the student, but let us know what's going on, and we can make sure that the student is in a good place and has his or her needs met, and we can offer the opportunity for a sit-out if they feel that they might need some time to get family affairs in order before they proceed. So that person did not take a sit-out. She took about a week or two, and she was back in full force. She's done a great job. That says a lot about, you know, we all handle grief differently too. All right, so that's an option that we have. Resubmission is also an option to you as an instructor of record, and people handle it differently. So I just want to kind of put it out there. If I see a student misunderstands an assignment or doesn't understand the content, I want that student to have the opportunity to redo the assignment. What I usually do is I usually grade on Monday and maybe Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, depending on my weekend. But I always have it done within the first few days. So then if there is a problem, I can ask them to have the resubmission done by that following Sunday. So in a 7-week period, you don't want to get too far out, because all of a sudden, you know, you don't want to wait until the end of the, you know, term when you have 3 days to grade everything and you know, you're trying to grade not only the assignment that was due that last week, but then all of the stuff that they turned in because they wanted resubmission. My own personal, I also do not allow resubmissions on the last assignment, on the final assignment, just for that reason. Our grades are due so fast after that final, you know, hurrah, that it takes all my time and energy to grade that last paper. So I don't allow resubmissions on it, unless it's really like telling that the student didn't understand something, you know, so. So any questions about this part of it? I just have, you know, is that out of character for the student, or can you tell something was up that week? You know, I've reached out to students for that. Hey, what's going on? This isn't your line of work. Well, you know, my child is in the ER, you know, whatever. So they have a lot of stuff going on. If you notice it's out of character, talk to them. So any questions about that? So basically what they do is they just go into Canvas and they'll resubmit a second submission. If as long as you have that box checked that they can submit more than once, multiple submissions. Okay. All right. This is just recommendations if you do allow resubmission, that I usually, after I have that conversation, I'll send them an email and just say, for our conversation, this is what you're going to do by this time, and just kind of lay it out for them, so that they know and I know what the expectations are. We talked about the incomplete. They'll get an I. Do not give them a grade, because then the I will need to switch into what grade they actually earn. I actually had a professor that I used to work with, and he would give them the grade that they would get if they turned everything in. So the student never had to do the work. So you give them the I with the grade that they've earned. At the end, final grades are submitted within the first, I think it's about Wednesday after. So we end on Sunday, the final grades are due on that Wednesday. There's a way to do that through MySWU, so that initial MySWU thing that we went through and we got the doctoral portal. That's also where you go to submit your final grades. This is all a deadline from the registrar's office. It's not our deadline, it's their deadline. So there's some financial aid attachments to this that we need to make sure that we're meeting our responsibilities so that we don't hurt their financial aid. And every course has accreditation assessments in it. Every single course now has at least one accreditation assessment in it. Okay. And those are noted by a number following the assignment. And it's also, all of the assessments for accreditation are uploaded to Chalk and Wire instead of Canvas. Okay.
It can be in addition to Canvas. Can be in addition to Chalk and Wire.
Not anymore. So they're all going into Chalk and Wire.
Can you do it? Can you grade them in better places?
No, because the rubrics, and this is something that I've been working with Chalk and Wire the last couple of weeks. I'll tell you that all of the rubrics were done in a certain way that they would all have to be redone. And we're not going to redo all of the rubrics for all the programs. So the way that the rubrics are set up right now, you have to put your course, the grade in manually into Canvas. So thank you for asking that. So it is a manual. That's why most of the assignments are 100 points. Most of them are. And so it's very easy to figure out, you know, 3 out of 4 is 75. You know, and then you just go into Canvas and put 75 in the Canvas. Yeah, I know I was looking for an easier way to do that one, believe me. So contact information is in here if you need, and I just want to thank you for your time and your service.